On the towering cliffs of southwest China, where mountains rise like walls into the sky, lie hundreds of coffins placed in a manner unseen anywhere else. They are not hidden beneath the soil, nor laid to rest within caves. Instead, they hang suspended in the vast emptiness between earth and heaven. For ages, only birds could touch them. Human hands could not. The world below forgot they existed, and yet, like whispers carried on the wind, they told of an ancient tribe, a people once believed to defy the earth, to soar like the eagles, and who chose to lay their dead not in darkness, but in the open embrace of the sky. To stand before such a sight is to feel the presence of something sacred, something beyond reason. The cliffs do not merely hold coffins, they hold a question. Why would mortals choose to leave their ancestors exposed to storms, winds, and time itself? The people behind the hanging coffins were known as the Bo, a forgotten tribe that once dwelled in the rugged mountains of Sichuan and Yunnan. Of them, we know almost nothing. History has all but erased their name. Yet fragments whisper that their culture began to flourish more than 3,000 years ago, rising quietly in the shadow of peaks and rivers. But the world does not stand still. By the time of the Ming Dynasty, winds of change swept across the empire. The imperial court, eager to open its doors to distant lands, welcomed new crops brought from across the oceans. Maize and potatoes from the Americas. These plants thrived where rice could not, in the cold and rocky soils of mountain highlands. What had once been uninhabitable for man suddenly became fertile ground. From the lowlands, waves of Han settlers surged into the high mountains, pushing ever deeper into the territories of the old tribes. For the Bo, their valleys and rivers, the lifeblood of their people, were steadily taken away. Their space shrank year after year, until they had nowhere left to turn but the most forbidding peaks and impregnable cliffs. There, they built fortresses upon the ridges, defended mountain strongholds, and resisted as best they could. But the empire was vast, and the pressure relentless. By the year 1573, after campaign upon campaign drenched in blood, the Bo had all but vanished. Their villages lay silent, their fortresses broken, their names scattered to dust. And yet, one thing endured, not the voices of the Bo, nor their temples, nor their written records, but their coffins, hung high between heaven and earth, swaying in the mountain winds. The last testimony of a people lost to time. For centuries, the coffins of the Bo hung untouched, hidden in the high places of stone where no human eye could reach. Generations passed, dynasties rose and fell, and still the coffins remained, silent guardians clinging to the cliffs. To the world below, they were invisible, unknown, as though the mountains themselves had swallowed them whole. It was not until a wandering foreigner stumbled upon them that their secret was first revealed. An American archaeologist, David Sett, journeying through the wild lands of Yunnan, came upon a strange sight. Shattered coffins fallen from the cliffs above. Within the broken wood lay bones of men long gone, along with ornaments of jade and silver, treasures buried with the dead. He wrote of what he saw, a burial unlike any other, neither beneath the ground nor upon rooftops, but suspended in the void of air. In 1946, the mountains themselves gave up more of their secret. After a furious storm and a landslide in Sichuan, 6 massive wooden coffins tumbled from the cliffs. When they broke upon the rocks below, they revealed not only human remains, but rings, combs, carved ornaments of bone and wood, fragments of lives from centuries past. The villagers who discovered them whispered of curses, but also of awe, and hurried to tell the local authorities. Yet even then, the coffins were recorded in nothing more than a brief note, their mystery left untouched. It was not until decades later, in 1974, that scholars dared to climb the cliffs themselves. By ropes and pulleys, they carefully lowered 10 coffins from heights of 100 meters, the wood groaning as it touched the earth for the first time in centuries. Inside, they found not only bones, but the remnants of a people's spirit. Ceramics, jade carvings, musical instruments, funeral robes layered in silks and hemp, each artifact a fragment of forgotten history. Here, the voices of the bow spoke once more. When the coffins were opened, they revealed more than bones. They unveiled an entire world, sealed away for centuries. Inside lay the proof of a society both ordinary and noble, humble and splendid, all preserved in silence until the day the wood was broken apart. Among the remains, the scholars uncovered garments, hundreds of fragments of cloth. Some were coarse, woven from hemp, simple and thin, belonging perhaps to common folk. Others, however, were of a different nature. Robes upon robes, layer upon layer of finely crafted attire. There were nobles wrapped in as many as 29 layers of robes and 13 layers of trousers, their bodies encased in garments like fortresses of fabric. Every fold of cloth bore the mark of artistry, dyed threads, intricate weaving, and the richness of a people who understood beauty even in death. They found ornaments of jade and silver, rings and hair combs, necklaces and carved trinkets, all laid to accompany the dead upon their journey. They found musical instruments, silent now but once alive with sound, as though the departed might still need music in the world beyond. And they found ceramics, bowls, and tools, suggesting that in the beliefs of the bow, death was not the end, but the continuation of life's daily rituals, to eat, to wear, to play, to work. Even more mysterious were the murals painted upon stone walls near some of the coffins. In vivid strokes of red, they depicted the scenes of a vanished life: men riding horses, villagers celebrating festivals, warriors in combat, fishermen casting nets, and archers drawing their bows. Through these images, the dead still lived, their customs, their joys, their battles captured forever in color upon rock. The very style of these paintings echoed the artistry found in the fortresses and caves once held by the bow, suggesting a unity of spirit between the tombs of the dead and the homes of the living. Here, the boundary between life and death seemed blurred, as though the ancestors had only stepped into another realm, still watching over those who remained. The coffins themselves were as much a marvel as the treasures within. Each was hewn from the sacred Nanmu wood, a timber known for its endurance, prized for centuries in the making of temples and thrones. The bow carved entire trunks into vessels for the dead, hollowing the heart of the tree to cradle another heart now stilled. Strong, heavy, unyielding, these coffins were not meant to decay quickly, but to last across centuries, as though defying the flow of time. Some coffins were shaped like boats. They resembled vessels that might sail a river, their prows curved, their bodies smooth. It was no accident. The bow lived by the waters, trading and traveling across streams and rivers, their lives tied to the current. To place the dead in a coffin shaped like a boat was to give them passage, not across rivers of earth, but across the eternal waters of the spirit. Others bore the form of houses, echoing the shelters of the living. To lie in such a coffin was to rest in a home beyond death, secure and familiar, a promise that the afterlife mirrored the life left behind. Still others were carved into rectangular chests, plain yet solemn, symbols of dignity without grandeur. And these coffins were immensely heavy, some weighing more than 200 kilograms. The ancients crafted them from single blocks of wood, lids sealed with bronze in certain cases, their weight alone ensuring their permanence against storm and time. But more remarkable still was the way they were placed upon the mountains. Some rested upon wooden beams driven deep into cliff faces, their ends hidden in stone, as though nailed to the sky itself. Others were laid within the mouths of natural caves, the mountains cradling them like mothers holding their children. And there were those set into niches carved directly into the rock, the stone hollowed by human hands until it welcomed the coffin within its embrace. Some coffins hung a mere 10 meters above the ground, while others loomed at staggering heights of 130 meters, far beyond the reach of any intruder. Each coffin a riddle, each placement a silent proclamation. Here rests one who was lifted high, closer to heaven than to earth. The cliffs, lined with coffins, became more than stone. They became cathedrals of air and rock, where the bow entrusted their dead to the guardianship of mountain and cloud. Yet even as scholars studied the coffins with tools and reason, the people of the mountains told another story. A story that whispered not of ropes, nor scaffolds, nor chisels, but of wings. The bow, they said, were children of the cliffs, born not merely to walk the earth, but to rise into the air like eagles. In ancient times, when their tribe flourished, there was a man who grew jealous of their power and wealth. He challenged them, saying, "If you are truly favored by heaven, then show me mastery not only of the rivers but of the skies." And so, to prove themselves, the bow began to lay their dead not beneath the waters alone, but upon the faces of the cliffs, suspended in the realm between heaven and earth. In this act, they proclaimed to the world that their ancestors could ascend freely, without chains, their souls rising like smoke into the stars. Legends said their ancestors became the very constellations, the moon, the watchful lights above. From there they gazed down upon their descendants, guiding them, blessing them, forever watching. Other tales told of a powerful clan, the House of Ha in Yunnan. In the old days, this family was rich and mighty. It was believed that if they dared to hang the coffins of their dead high against the storms and winds, then their descendants would grow more prosperous, braver, and stronger. For generations they obeyed the custom, defying the heavens and leaving their dead exposed upon the mountains. But in time, the winds grew fierce, and some coffins were torn away by the gales. As the coffins fell, so too did the fortune of the family. From wealth, they dwindled into poverty, never again to rise. Whether these stories were truth or dream, no one can say. They were told by villagers, passed from mouth to mouth, embroidered with awe and sorrow. And yet, they hold within them a meaning deeper than fact. For in these tales, the bow are remembered not as a tribe erased, but as a people who touched the sky. Though legend spoke of wings and stars, scholars of later ages sought answers of stone and wood. How, they asked, could a people with nothing more than chisels of stone, crude hammers, ropes, and their own strength raise such colossal coffins into the heights of sheer cliffs? One theory claimed that in ages long past, the waters of rivers swelled far higher than today. If the waves once touched the mouths of the cliffs, then perhaps the coffins were borne by boats and slid easily into caves. At first hearing, the idea seemed plausible, far simpler than climbing sheer walls with a burden of hundreds of kilograms. But in time, geologists revealed the truth. In 2,000 years, no such rising of waters had ever been recorded, no upheaval of earth that could lift rivers to such impossible heights. Another theory said the bow had built vast scaffolds of bamboo, tied together with rope and reed, rising story upon story along the mountainsides. But when modern archaeologists themselves attempt such scaffolding, even with iron and steel, the work consumed 2 full months, each beam trembling, each rope strained. How, then, could a tribe with neither iron nor engines raise entire platforms of bamboo against a cliff face, and still complete the rites before the body decayed? This theory, too, fell into doubt, dismissed as unlikely. The answer, scholars found, was written not in the sky, nor in the rivers, but in the stone itself. For when they studied the cliffs, they saw rows of holes drilled deep into the rock, still visible after centuries. Into these holes the bow had once driven stout wooden beams, like the rungs of a ladder. Step by step, they built a path across the face of the cliff. Upon this precarious road, they carried their coffins, balanced above void and death, until they reached the chosen place. Then, with ropes of twisted fiber, they lowered each coffin into its niche, resting it upon beams set firm into the rock. When the work was done, they removed the ladders, dismantled the bridges, leaving nothing but silence and mystery. Yet even this explanation does not account for all. Some coffins lie hidden in overhanging caves where no rope could lower them, no ladder could reach. Were their methods still unknown, techniques lost to time, or was there something in the skill of the bow that the modern world has yet to understand? Thus the mystery lingers, a puzzle carved not only in stone, but in the very silence of the mountains. For the bow, death was never an ending. It was but a crossing, a passage from one dwelling to another. The body might grow still, but the soul, the soul would rise and continue its journey, clothed, fed, and accompanied by the tools of life. Thus, within the coffins, scholars found not only bones but garments, food, ornaments, combs, and tools. There were necklaces of jade, carved rings of bone, musical instruments for joy, bowls and pots for sustenance. Every object whispered the same belief: the dead would live on in a world beyond sight, and they must be cared for as they were in life. The mountains themselves were stairways to heaven, each peak a rung, each cliff a step, leading upward into the domain of gods and ancestors. To hang a coffin upon a sheer wall of stone was to place the soul closer to the heavens, where it might ascend freely. The dead did not lie buried beneath the soil, shackled to darkness. Instead, they were lifted into the light, into the winds, into the realm where your earth touched the sky. This was more than a rite. It was a covenant, a promise that the living would raise their ancestors higher, closer to eternity, so that in return, the ancestors might look down with favor. Some Chinese scholars of the Ming Age recorded this custom. In the Yunnan Chronicle of Customs, it was written, "When a man of this people dies, his body is placed in a wooden coffin, and the coffin is hung upon the sheer cliffs. The higher the coffin rests, the greater the blessings it grants to the descendants below. And should a coffin fall too soon, that too was deemed a sign of fortune, for the spirit had hastened its return to earth." Here, belief and necessity intertwined. By placing the coffins upon cliffs, the bow also shielded their dead from beasts, grave robbers, and the hands of enemies. The mountain walls became both temple and fortress, guarding the sacred rest of those who had passed on. To stand before these hanging coffins, even today, is to feel that sense of awe. It is to understand that to the bow, life and death were woven together, and the cliffs themselves were altars where earth met sky. The mystery of the hanging coffins was not confined to the cliffs of Sichuan and Yunnan. Across the borders, in the deep forests and mountains of Vietnam, the same echoes are heard. Coffins set high above rivers and valleys, resting where no living hand may easily reach. In the province of Thanh Hoa, along the Luan River in Quan Hoa, there lies a great cave hidden within the limestone mountains. Inside, explorers found many wooden coffins placed upon ledges, far above the water that flows dark and restless beneath. They had endured centuries, untouched, their wooden shells blackened with age, yet still clinging to the stone. Further north, in the highlands of Son La, at Mok Chau's Sui Bang, researchers counted dozens of coffins carved from hollow tree trunks, each one balanced upon wooden beams or branches wedged into the rock. Every coffin stood apart, each upon its own ledge, as though every soul demanded a resting place of solitude, overlooking the forests and rivers below. The ears of these lands told old tales. Long ago, they said, the Za people lived here, until strangers, the Thai, came to claim the fertile valleys. Rather than battle with blood, they settled the matter by a contest, whose arrow could fly farther, striking the cliff itself. The Thai, with arrows tipped in beeswax, outmatched the Za, whose bronze-tipped arrows fell short. Defeated, the Za were forced to retreat, leaving behind their valleys, their rivers, their homes. Yet in death, they sought to preserve what life had taken. They hung their coffins upon the cliffs, safe from the hands of enemies, untouched by floods and beasts. But scholars debate still, were these coffins truly the work of the Za or of other ancient tribes? Some argue they belong to the old Mon Khmer peoples, the Za, the Khmer, or the Sin Mun, remnants of a forgotten age. Others see resemblance to the burial customs of the Thai and Myeong, whose nobles once buried their dead in hollowed tree trunks, sometimes placing them upon high places, close to sky and mountain spirits. No carvings remain, no inscriptions to reveal their makers. Only the coffins themselves, dark wood clinging to pale stone. silent against the mist of the forests, keep their vigil. Like their cousins in China, they endure as a mystery, proof that, across lands and tribes, men once sought to lift their dead closer to the heavens. Even now, the cliffs of Sichuan and Yunnan hold their silent guardians. More than 300 coffins have been found, some carved as recently as 4 centuries past, yet many reaching further back, into the age of the Sung, the Tang, even the spring and autumn period, 2.5 millennia ago. The oldest among them may have hung there before the name of Christ was spoken, before empires we know had risen, long before the bow themselves faded into the shadows of history. And yet, despite the centuries, their true purpose remains veiled. No script was left to explain them, no stone inscriptions carved, no chronicles in the bow tongue to pass down their faith. We have only the coffins and the silence of mountains that watched them lifted high. Scholars have measured, studied, written. Villagers have told tales of wings, of stars, of families cursed or blessed by the winds. But no answer is complete. Were these coffins truly meant to carry souls nearer to heaven? Were they symbols of prest, ige, set high so that the noble dead might gaze upon the valleys forever? Or were they fortresses of the spirit, raised high to protect the bodies from beasts, floods, and the desecrating hand of enemies? Perhaps it was all of these things, perhaps it was none. What is certain is this: with stone tools, crude ropes, and bare hands, the bow accomplished what even modern men find near impossible. They carved holes deep into rock, drove wooden beams into sheer walls, carried burdens of wood and bone upon paths that dangled over death itself. And they did so not once, but hundreds of times, across valleys and rivers, through generations, until the mountains themselves became vast cathedrals of the dead. To look upon these hanging coffins is to feel a strange weight in the heart. They are not ruins, not monuments of stone, but fragile wood, and yet they endure still. They sway against the cliffs like dark lanterns of eternity, whispers of a people lost yet unforgotten. The bow are gone, their seas are silent, their fortresses have crumbled, but in the cliffs of China and the caves of Vietnam, their memory lingers. Every coffin is a question, every shadow is a story unfinished, and so the mystery endures, the eternal secret of the hanging coffins, suspended forever between earth and sky.